Okay, thank you, Berger. Well, you've said a lot of what I needed to say. So, Vinaya has an amazing resume. She's an award-winning journalist with 15 years experience in print, radio, digital, and TV media. She's currently the Mumbai bureau chief of CNN News 18 and has previously worked with The Hindu, The Times of India, The Sunday Guardian, and All India Radio. She's covered diverse issues ranging from the environment to gender, defense, politics, crime, terror, and public health. An Ivy LP alumni. Now, I think Vijay will have to expand on that. She was the only Indian chosen for a program on women in leadership by the US government in 2018. Her work on gender has won her many awards, and Vijaya's coverage of the environmental issues around oil spill won her national recognition. Her scoop on corruption in a critical defense deal prompted the union government to order an inquiry into the deal. Her academic excellence won her a full scholarship at South Asia's premier journalism school, Asian College of Journalism, in the year 2009. She has currently been chosen for the internationally renowned Chevening Fellowship, which is really a very, very prestigious fellowship. So here she is, the lady herself, Vinaya Deshpande.
Thank you so much for all the kind words. And yeah, I've just returned from Sangli, Western Maharashtra, a few hours ago after covering the ravaging floods for over 4 days. And that is why I thought I should talk about it, because it's been almost 1.5 years. And it seems like we've only been covering disasters and pandemics, really. 2019 floods, and then we saw COVID for a year and a half almost, and now these ravaging floods, which have taken the lives of almost 164 people from Maharashtra and led to evacuation of over 2 lakh people. So a disaster of a massive scale, really. Unfortunately, TV can only accord a limited space to it, but the kind of stories that come behind these disasters are quite terrible. And so I thought that would be a pertinent topic to talk about today, after just a few hours after returning from there. Well, to begin with, yes, role and responsibilities. I head the Mumbai bureau for CNN News 18. TV channel typically is a very hectic work scenario. They begin by around 5:36 in the morning, where you screen through several newspapers, see if there is anything that can be done through the day. The morning news list goes up by around 7:30 at the most. The news wheel begins from 8 in the morning, which means we have bulletins running from 8. Most of the times, if there's something important happening from anywhere, Maharashtra or Goa, reporter lives begin from 8 itself, and then you go chase the newsmakers and see if you're getting scoop through the day. By the time the day ends, it's possibly late in the night, when you've not just finished your life, given your input, but also have thought of and lined up something for the next day. So yeah, to all this, to make sure that you understand the news for a national viewership, to try and get as much as possible in terms of the field voices on the TV coverage. Some of the roles and responsibilities, of course. And what I thought I should talk to you about with respect to coverage of disasters, because there's only a limited thing that people get to see on TV or get to read in newspapers. Possibly newspapers are in a better position to give coverage because they can allot 1 or 2 pages, while a TV channel always moves on breaking news. So, for example, the floods in Maharashtra, not just in Maharashtra, I mean, we had natural calamities across in several states across the country this time, unfortunately. Floods were reported from Maharashtra, from Karnataka. You had terrible landslides being reported from Kinnaur. Jammu saw flash floods. So, in some sense, it's nature's fury that we're looking at. Uh, what I feel is, uh, most of the times when such stories happen, 3 or 4 days we are continuously on the coverage, but somehow then everybody, including the viewers, the channel, we all lose track of what would have led to something like this. Because, if I talk about Maharashtra in particular, uh, Maharashtra, Western Maharashtra, coastal Maharashtra saw massive floods in 2005, after which they saw severe floods in 2019. And now, within 2 years, we have seen another episode of ravaging floods. Uh, Several districts of Western Maharashtra. Why is Western Maharashtra important? It's the sugar belt. It generates a lot of revenue. The agriculture economic model from Western Maharashtra is extremely crucial. Coastal Maharashtra, which hadn't really been reporting a lot of disasters for many years, has started reporting a lot of landslides. This also goes back to the cyclones that Mumbai and coastal Maharashtra have witnessed in the last 1.5 years, which this side of the country usually did not witness. So, right now, the policymakers say it is climatic change that is leading to all these disasters. It is a natural disaster. The first question with respect to floods, and that was asked in 2019, that is asked right now, and it's probably too premature to answer right now, is whether this is a natural disaster or a human made disaster. Because in 2019, it was ostensibly believed that due to the lack of coordination between Maharashtra and Karnataka, where the dam doors of Almaty were not opened in time, that led to perishing of several precious lives and displacement of lakhs of people. Research found out, there was an expert committee that was appointed. It found out that that was really not the case. It was unprecedented rainfall that led to such a situation. In 2021, if you look at the level of rainfall, it may not have been as bad as 2021, where it was prolonged for over a fortnight, and the severity of rainfall was distributed for those many days. This time on, though there might have been fewer days when we saw heavy rainfall, but the amount of rainfall was in some sense catastrophic, and especially in the catchment areas of several dams. Though our dams are barely 60% full right now, which means that we didn't even allow them to fill up, uh, anticipating disasters with respect to weather prediction models. And yet you saw tremendous ravaging effect of the floods this time on as well. So what happens most of the times is, when such reporting goes on, you see for a week, you see for 4 or 5 days, you feel really bad that something like this is happening, and then you say, enough, I don't want to see disasters anymore. And then you lose track of what the reasons behind such catastrophes would have been. On one hand, Maharashtra wants to develop itself as a tourism destination. On the other hand, there are apprehensions among several environmentalists with respect to flouting of norms when we carry out any developmental activities. The typical debate is development or environment, which we have seen emerge in the last few years as well. And the impact of it couldn't have been felt more catastrophically than the one that we are seeing right now. Coastal Maharashtra bore the brunt of it. We saw severe landslides. And let me tell you, policymakers tell us, and that after the massive rainfall last time, there was a map that was made about areas that were prone to landslides, that were prone to disasters. This time on, when all these landslides took place, around 12, 15 landslides took place in coastal Maharashtra this time on. Most of them were in places which were not identified as landslide prone areas, which means newer areas are possibly developing which experts could not identify previously. As I said, this is too premature to talk about it, but in the cacophony of this 24-hour coverage, there are times when we lose track of uh, the reasons and the bigger story that may possibly need us to, uh, as a society, change our approach, as a society, look at the reasons behind disasters and ask questions now, whether climate change, whether we need a long-term policy, is all that the government will think of, is something that prestigious citizens like you all will come ahead and speak about and give your inputs on. But this is something that has really been bothering me as a journalist who has been covering environment related issues as well for the last several years. Uh, Going ahead, why did I specifically choose to talk about disasters? Firstly, yes, it is fresh. It has just happened, and I'm just out of that place. And the visuals, the stories, the impact of it all is just too difficult to shrug off, and to step into Mumbai and say, okay, I've left behind a world uh, which is full of stories that need to be told and people who need desperate help. Uh, so of course, there are problems with respect to the issues that the people face there. The biggest problem right now is the availability of potable water. Yesterday, I was in a village named Dudgaon, which is in Sangli, which is one of the more prosperous belts of Maharashtra. And one would just have to see to believe what kind of uh, jaddojehed, what kind of effort women there had to take only to fetch a pot of not so clean looking water which they would drink later. And I I shuddered thinking what kind of waterborne diseases such water would bring at a time when civic administrations themselves are incapable of uh, providing water to that extent to people who have been displaced. 2,30,000 is no mean amount. If 2,30,000 people go out of their homes, have no way to survive, are possibly staying with their relatives or staying somewhere else or staying in shelter, temporary shelter homes that have been converted by the state, typically the schools or colleges or marriage halls. Uh, yes, the government asked for private participation, but the the nature of exercise that it requires in order to give help to these people, and we are talking about areas where shops were flooded, shops were underwater for over 4 to 5 days, which means even when medical stores open, there isn't much hope that they would have a stock which can be retrieved. At a time when you see that the flood waters have receded, your priority is to clean up the muck, to clean up all the debris that the flood has left behind in your house, the house which is sinking, the area around you which is sinking. I mean, Sangli, I was there for 3 days, and I was there at a time when there was around 10 to 12 feet water in the city, to a time when water had receded, and the stench in the city, on the streets of the city, was unbelievable. At a time when the civic administration fights to make sure that at least the debris that is left behind by the ravaging floods is cleared on time. You see tapeworms, huge tapeworms on the streets of the city. You see waters leaving behind carcasses of animals. In rural areas, it was worse. I mean, you had crocodiles on rooftops when people wanted to go back home. Uh, they were just too scared because crocodiles were either in the house or in their farms or on their rooftops. Uh, and at this point in time, well, many people are helping with a lot of dry ration. People are sending across clothes, dry ration. What people need at this point is potable water. Unfortunately, again, a lot of plastic will get generated because whenever people will send, and people are slowly sending that amount of water, it is highly insufficient. But uh, I wonder at times how, you know, we do not really think of what will be the requirement with respect to such areas, because we are talking of 9 districts of the 36 districts in Maharashtra which have been affected, which means if you look at it as a civic administration issue, you're looking at providing at least chlorine tablets or chlorine drops to such populations without making them dependent on the local medical stores, which are already grappling with losing all their supplies. You're looking at basic medical facilities like dry powder, antifungal powders, which can be distributed, balms, because several people have got stuck in their houses, have walked through waters, they have aches and pains, and somehow this hasn't really, till the time I left Sangli, I didn't really see any public health scams which were providing chlorine tablet. This was the experience I had in 2019 as well. I was there for almost a week, covered almost the aftermath of flood, and when the waters were receding, severe shortage of chlorine tablets, severe shortage of chlorine drops. People who wanted to drink water had no water to drink. How much are you going to ask people to boil water, water which just looks unclean? So in some sense, is it not an invitation for public health disaster, for waterborne diseases at a time right now when COVID is already a threat? I mean, Kolhapur and Sangli, two of the worst affected districts due to the floods, are also two of the worst affected districts due to COVID. Vaccination program has halted. People through these ravaging floods have just forgotten about masks. Nobody wears a mask. Right now, the figures look lower because nobody is testing. But if if there is a third wave, if and when there is a third wave, and if we start on these numbers, I shudder to think where things will go right now. So, in some sense, it opens up a Pandora's box about how how seriously do we think about such public health catastrophes, if I may call them. And I tend to think that if a fraction of this were to happen in Mumbai, it would possibly receive international attention because Mumbai is the financial capital, and it really makes me feel that the value of your life depends on where you live. I mean, we have always overhyped the spirit of Mumbai, how despite terror attacks and despite floods, Mumbai just wakes up the next day and looks like it's clean and it's just back on track. I don't know how much of it is compulsion, but if you go in the interiors and if you see, I mean, there's so much more resilience. People have lost their houses, the houses in which they were born, the houses in which they grew up, just collapsed one day. They stand on the debris there, on the rubbles of their houses, not knowing what to do, knowing that it will possibly take years for that government aid to come to build their houses. And who are these people? These are people who pick up sticks from the forest in order to sustain themselves on a daily basis, go on as daily wage laborers. I'm sorry, is anybody saying anything?
No, please
Fine.
go on.
Fine, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, it makes me think that we generally tend to overhype our financial capitals and, the glitzy cities, whereas uh, people are really a lot more resilient. And though we may not see their hardships because we are just too tied up with our own lives and we have our own problems to think and to try and deal with somebody else's or even to see somebody else's problems. I mean, if I were to show you the stories of disaster every day, you may watch them for a day, for two at the most, and then say, enough, I have problems of my own, just don't overburden me anymore. Makes me think what kind of anyway, that's a larger thought. I wouldn't really like to talk about it right now, but yes, disturbing times. I mean, I went on, and I would like to tell you some of my experiences if you don't mind. I went on one of the rescue operations just now, just 4 days ago with the Indian Army. It was a column of the Indian Army which was stationed in Sangli. Um they were carrying boats in order to rescue people to it's a battle at several levels, and it's a battle for which the army is not really trained. I mean, you are trained as an army personnel, you are trained to possibly shoot a terrorist or to fight on the borders, but to uh, to go into flood affected areas to convince people who are already emotionally distraught, who are already not sure about how situation is going to look like tomorrow, to give them that trust that they are going to be fine, they can be retrieved from the situation. Because most of the times if you go in the interiors, you'll see that people are not willing to leave home. One of the reasons why 2019 saw such huge loss of lives was because people did not think that the water levels will rise to such an extent that they will lose their lives. People refused to leave their houses. People refused. And when water levels actually started rising, many people did not leave their homes because They had their livestock in the house. They had their, guy, bhais, who are like family members. They wouldn't have left them behind for that. And it was almost impossible at that point in time to rescue animals, livestock, along with human lives. We also saw the tragedy in Brahmana last time in 2019, where almost 17 people lost their lives because the boat turned over because it was, you know, overweight because of the number of people that it was rescuing. This time on, though, people did leave their homes on time, and that is why we see that, for example, I was in Sangli. I keep saying this, but Sangli saw zero casualties to one of the most terrible floods that Sangli has witnessed in 100 years. Sangli saw zero casualties and almost 2 lakh evacuations. Now that's an amazing figure. That's, if you look at the human exercise that went into evacuating people within a matter of a week, 2 lakh people leaving their homes and moving into other places is something else. And still you saw that NDRF, Army, Coast Guard still tried to rescue people because there still were a few thousand people who were stuck in their houses because they thought the water levels will not rise to that extent, or the waters will recede and we are staying in, say, a 5-story structure or a 6-story structure. We will just move to a higher floor and we'll stay there. No electricity, no water after one point, because both electricity and water supply have to be cut after a point when the water level starts rising. In Sangli, the danger level for the river is 45 feet. When I reached Sangli, it was already flowing at 54 feet. So you can imagine the way the city itself would have been inundated. I'm talking of the city. Let's also not talk about the rest of the district, which is rural areas, which almost resembled like, uh, a sea, because till the time wherever you saw, you only saw water. So at such a point, the army men who were there, and I say men because only men were deployed, uh, were trying to emotionally appeal to these people to leave their homes, were carrying out daredevil operations. At one point, I was with the army team in one of the locations where the water was over 12 feet deep, and they were trying to rescue a family from the second floor of the building. The first floor was completely underwater. Uh, the kind of acrobatics that the army men had to do to climb on top of the second floor, because obviously you had no proper access to climb there. And then the family which was to be rescued suddenly developed cold feet. They got scared looking at the water. Obviously, you look at those currents there, and it's not like the water is just standing still there. It's two different rivers which have a confluence there, and so waters have very strong current there. Looking at that current, the family just developed cold feet. The family refused to get evacuated at a time when there was no water, no food, no electricity in their own houses. There were women in the family. This officer of the army climbed up on the second floor, took the risk, stood up on a railing, very precariously hanging there, telling them, please trust us. This one person who is holding you right now is a Jawan who has killed terrorists in Kashmir. He is one of the best we have. You are in safe hands. Please come down. He will take care of you. At this point, even when I say this, narrating this incident, I have goosebumps, and I have a lump in my throat. But at that point, to witness that, to convince that family, was it on their chart of duties when you know some young man in a rural area in Satara decided to join the Indian Army? Was he told that at one point you will possibly have to go and conduct such daredevil rescue operations as well? No, but so many thousands of unsung heroes put their lives in the line of duty, possibly going way beyond their duty. That it's not just the figures we talk about, it's not just numbers. For every every one of those 2 lakhs rescued, evacuated, there's a story that is waiting to be told. And at times I just feel lucky that I'm in a profession where I get to see all these things up close and then come out and tell people about these people, because for us, heroes are the glittering stars on TV and on the movie screens, but it all seems so shallow when you see these people who don't even think twice before putting their lives at risk. I mean, we've seen NDRF rescue people. I have myself gone with the army to rescue people. At one point in time, our rescue boat met with an accident where the entire boat went and crashed into an electricity pole, because when you're uh, maneuvering through, very strong currents in a city, you do not know what's underneath. You do not know if it's water fountains, if it's the dividers, if it's an electricity pole, if it's trees. There are 1,000 structures on the streets of the cities, and at one point, our boat just went and crashed into a pole. And the army men just coolly got up, picked up their oars again, separated the boat from the pole which almost bent around because of the impact, and just started using the oar again and navigated the boat away from this as if nothing had happened. I always wonder, from where does one get this kind of grit, this kind of strength, and this kind of, I don't care what happens to me, and you don't even talk about it. Till the time I interviewed these men, they hadn't even thought about it. For them, it was just a job they're not supposed to do. But it's beautiful stories like these that uh, you get to witness, and through the terror attacks that Mumbai has witnessed, through the disasters that Maharashtra has witnessed, and through all these things that I have been able to cover in my journalistic life. It's it's just been a very humbling experience. Firstly, to see that you are absolutely a nobody. You make plans. You want to do this in life. You want to achieve that. You are thinking, oh, my evening fellowship, I'm traveling to London within the next few months whenever things open up. And there you are. You never know what happens really. You're just not there the next moment. The next moment, it just happens in a flash like this. The next moment, you see people die in front of your eyes. You know that you would have been there if just by luck, by chance, you are on the other end of it and somebody else has not survived it. As a human being, it's a humbling experience. It's also a very spiritual experience, but am I digressing too much? I'm so sorry. I don't know how long do I have to
Not
speak?
at all. Please,
Uh,
please, yeah, not at all.
so, yeah, I'm sorry. The impact of covering a natural disaster is just a bit too much. You tend to get uh, drawn into it. And so I was also planning to talk to you all about the life of a journalist, because beyond that frame of the camera, the minute the camera switches off, or for that camera to roll and for you as a journalist to show something to the world, there's a huge cost that you yourself have to give for this. And it's a privilege, no doubt, but it's a package deal. For example, we've been covering COVID for almost a year and a half. As TV journalists, we never had the privilege to work from home, because till the time people switch on TVs to watch news, there's no way that a TV journalist can sit at home. And the job profile is such that we have to be in places where the worst of the things are happening. For example, Dharavi was bursting with COVID cases, and we had to be there when it was, at the risk of our own lives. When COVID was still comparatively new, you never knew how you would die. You never knew how you would contract this disease, and you still had to be there. It's a cost wherein, for example, in the beginning of it, I have a small child, and in the beginning, things looked so scary for COVID that I remember for twice or thrice, it so happened that I was on field along with several other journalists, and I happened to be in enclosed spaces where somebody else had symptoms, and I, because of my job responsibility, had to be in that room for over 3 to 4 hours, confined in that space. I remember I was so petrified one day when such a thing happened again, and that person showed all the symptoms, that I called up my husband and I said, I am coming back home by tonight, but by the time I come back, I want you all to pack your bags and to leave the home and not be there at all. I stayed separately for 4 months away from my little one who doesn't sleep without me, even now, from my husband. And I am not used to coming back to an empty house. I can't bear the thought of opening the lock and not seeing a little face smiling at you and two little hands holding you, and a loving husband just looking at you and saying, okay, all is well. At such a time, putting your life at risk, going out every day, wearing those PPE kits, wearing masks, wearing face shields, all kinds of things in this Mumbai heat, staying without a washroom for 10 to 12 hours of the day, not having a drop of water for 10 to 12 hours of the day, not eating a thing for all those hours when you are out of the house. It almost felt like penance to me, because even now, I mean, it's only these floods that I have covered that I, after almost a year and a half, had my lunch in the last 2 days, because I was just out so much, and I couldn't bear the hunger anymore, that after a year and a half, I decided to remove my mask when I was on field in an isolated place where I would go and stand in a field with, say, two bananas or a slice of bread, gobble it all up before I could see a human being around me, put the mask on and come back. I feel the cost is just too much. Uh, I mean, yes, I absolutely love my job, and there's no way I would trade it for anything else in life. But at the same time, it's not as easy and as glamorous as it looks on camera, because to reach on that one location where you see so much of devastation, and there's always a standing joke about the TV journalists about how they show only this much, where the reality is this. Well, at times, yes, but at times, even to get there, where you, where the intensity of that situation, where the seriousness of that situation has to be conveyed, it isn't easy to go at a place where an entire village has been completely washed off and is nothing else but debris now, is emotionally, mentally quite difficult. Also, it has a huge risk, because you're going at a location where you may possibly see another tragedy, and you never know what happens then. Journalists have had to be rescued from serious situations. When you go in flood situations like these, you never know what happens. The other day, I was just lucky to be alive after that accident took place just 4 days ago. What if something else would have happened and the boat would have overturned and we would just not be here? So to reach at a location where things look difficult for you people on cameras, that, oh my god, this is Sangli city, oh my god, this is Kolhapur, oh my god, this is Raigad, for a person, for two persons to reach there, to go through roads which are closed, which are possibly underwater, which are not so good, which you would possibly never take in your life, just out of this impinging sense of responsibility that if I am here to cover a disaster, then people need to know how bad it really is, so that the ones who are stranded there should at least get some help. Because whatever you say of journalists, however bad you may feel about the crassness that may happen and the insensitivity that may happen, I do not deny anything of it. And I do not, as a person who wants to keep a clear conscience, it will be stupid of me to deny that anything of this happens. But at the same time, there is another side to the story, and that story is that if the journalist did not go there and show you what you were seeing, there is a system which is ready to deny it all. It is ready to deny people who suffer, deny their sufferings, deny that anything of it has ever happened. And that would be a larger shame for an entire population. Democracy, no democracy is a different debate, but it will just be very terrible. I mean, tomorrow, if you know there is waterlogging on the streets of Mumbai, we will shout and yell against the BMC and ask them to do something which is long term. I shudder to think that if journalists didn't go to all these remote places where people just take these sufferings into their strides. I mean, yesterday I was in a village in Ashta in Sangli, and a woman had lost her house. The house where she was born, the house where she grew up, she just lost it because the house just turned into a rubble. Within a day after she evacuated it due to the flood, because flood waters had reached almost the roof of her house. I had met her just a day after she lost her house. I can't imagine what will happen to me if I lose my house. And she said, yes, I've lost it. I said, what are you going to do now? She said, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I may have to rent a place. Survive I will. I'll figure out how. And I wondered how does such resilience come? I mean, where we are, where we are used to seeing images where people break down, where there's so much of emotional drama, where our serials are full of crap. These are real people who we call uneducated, who we say do not know much about life, who, in the technical sense of the term, may be living below the poverty line, because she was somebody who was just gathering firewood from the jungle around her place. She had no other source of employment really, while her brother was a small landholding farmer. Even that didn't generate much of employment. But these kind of stories, if they're not brought to the fore, if they're not told, I wonder what the purpose of journalism will be apart from the feel good stories. And while I do not deny that there should be feel good stories, there are positive stories, there are people who are doing good work. And I have had these fights from the time I was in my journalism school, where I was always taught that uh, in journalism, good people don't need you, good work doesn't need you. It's only the corruption, it's the bad things that need you, because you need to highlight all of it. And I've always had problems with that. I've always felt that, the whole definition of journalism, that if uh, dog bites man, that's not a story, but man bites dog, that's a story. I feel it's time that journalism showcases true selfless work as well, because people, along with seeing the sufferings, also need to see that generally the world is a good place to stay in. Not everybody is backstabbing and bad, and not everywhere is there this calamity waiting to be told about. And so I've always believed that there should be positive stories of people who truly deserve their stories to be told to the world, of people who are really working selflessly. And we have hundreds such examples. I mean, during the floods of Mumbai, and we have floods every year, I mean, waterlogging, we call it technically. Are you even aware of the number of people who, for no reason, they are not civic employees, they are nobody, they would possibly be peons working in some nearby building. And I have seen such people, random people on the street, who do nothing else, who just come walking when there is tremendous waterlogging. They've known that area for years, who just come and clear those leaves and all those things that are blocking the drainages of Mumbai streets, who just clear it. They are absolutely nobody, and they have no reason to do it. We don't know about them. We don't know that, if water is standing still there for a few hours, and we just call the BMC and expect the BMC staffers to come to figure out why it's not going, to figure out what's the problem. Do we even realize that there are hundreds of such people who just quietly, selflessly do these things and walk away as if they've done nothing at all? They would possibly go back home, not caring about leptospirosis for all the dirty water in which they've been standing for some time till the water levels have receded. Hundreds of people who stand near open drainages have no business to stand there. They're not civic employees. They're not paid by anybody. They just stand there to warn people to say, hey, don't come here. There's an open manhole. Don't come. Why do they need to do that? And why is it that we as an entire society never realize that there are people who are who are just doing good, not expecting anything at all. And I believe that such stories need to be told. Anyway, I think I can go on and on. I think I should stop because it may sound abrupt, but if any of you want to ask any questions, if I have been completely irrelevant or have spoken of completely random things, I don't know. I'm just out of covering floods, and I thought that this is something uh, that is really close to my heart and that I should talk about. I just stopped here in case any of you want to say anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Vinaya, I wrote down 6 questions. But at the end of this, I don't think I need to even ask you one. I mean, I'm so smashed, and I think our members as well. The emotion just leapt out of the screen, and all I can say is that you're an extremely brave woman. We did have an inkling of what it's all about, but you telling us has really made I mean, in fact, a colleague of mine has just said how fortunate we are to be in a city here. I can imagine what you went through, the emotion you felt. It was absolutely natural. I mean, I've seen and heard speakers, but this is a true, I think it just came out truly. And I must appreciate and thank you extremely for such a beautiful presentation. I'm sure there'll be questions, but I have just one thing which is bothering me. Okay, after you do all this and you come back, do you, in your sort of understanding, is anything done? I mean, we talk about disaster management, we talk about things being done, but is anything really done by the authorities after that, or the sort of same story goes on till it happens again?
No, it isn't. And it is also a process. You know, it's not like there is a disaster today and there is a change tomorrow. It is a process which, for example, Mumbai has been seeing waterlogging for several years. I mean, we have archives and we have photos of 100 years ago when Mumbai still saw this kind of flooding on the streets. Has anything changed? Well, every year the BMC is very upset with us for showing low angle shots of King's Circle and all those places which fill up first. But let me also tell you, this year the after it was in the pipeline for years at end, and so this is a very slow process, painfully and agonizingly slow. But this year on, the BMC has constructed underground water tanks.
Yes.
On the lines of what Japan has done. They will experiment with how this goes, but it isn't as it isn't as responsive. The system isn't as responsive as it should be. Is also because we as a population are not as accountability seeking as we should be. We do not ask our corporators why these things happen. We do not take note of a Times of India or I'm saying Times of India because it just came to my mind, but it could be any newspaper talking about the general body meeting, about what the BMC general body is doing, about what the corporators are doing. We never track these stories because these are not of interest to us. We do not track about what happens to sewage treatment plants, what happens to it. It's just something that doesn't, that's not our consideration when we vote. Most of us don't even vote for the BMC polls, for God's sake. So, I wonder why people say that the system is bad or the system is corrupt. We deserve the system is what I feel. And this may be extremely controversial, but we really do. If we do not care about the BMC elections, if we do not ask that June looking person who comes to you for seeing if your name is in the list or anything of what the person is planning to do for your ward, or if that nala there is cleared or not, what business do we have to shout at the BMC for not taking care of all these things? If we, it's all these levels which just keep accumulating. I think in civics we should have chapters on, as a citizen, what is your charter of responsibilities in terms of the questions you should be asking your corporator, questions you should be asking your MLA, questions you should be asking your MP, because at the end of it, they they have the power to change things. They are supposed to do that. Instead, we talk of some lofty ideas and vote on caste basis and think on, oh, somebody came and did something for my housing society and now let us do this. It's, what are we even thinking? I'm sorry.
Would the members like to ask any questions, please?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Yeah, Vinay, as President Berjor just said, you spoke your heart out, and it was it's an honorable profession, a very noble profession that you are doing. I had a couple of questions, but I'll just try to make it fast. While you were talking, I also realized that we blame our MLA or our MLC or corporator. But today, when we went for a meeting to this Varsha Gaikwad, Minister of State of Education, we saw that there were many people who came for favors, and there were many people, very few people, if I may say so, that we went to give some. We want to do a project with her. So the kind of openness which she had, and the kind of respect which we got, is because perhaps she felt that they really want to help. So she called the right people around. Similarly, in your case, as you said, tell me, is there when we know that you, like now that you know that you've been to Sangli and saw the problems, what all happened, are all people like you also called by the government authorities, say, to plan for the coming year when it is there, the monsoons, that what all needs to be taken care? Are you also part of the, I mean, you people should be the right people to be there to guide the government that perhaps you should have done this, so that you could have avoided this. Does it happen?
We're not experts. No, we're not experts. So we're not on the bodies. But what happens is there is an informal discussion, yes, and I wouldn't deny that. So, if I meet a politician, a minister, and I tell that person that I was here and this happened, there would at least be a feedback mechanism where, the person will listen. Oh, this is something we could have done. Whether it's done or not is immaterial, but we're not experts, so we're not on the government bodies, neither of us, and we shouldn't be. Ideally, there are experts in the field who should be, and the government should be listening to, instead of trashing their reports, instead of just keeping those reports in the in those beautiful looking almiras, or at times not so beautiful looking almiras in the Mantralaya. They should actually be listening to those reports, but generally doesn't happen because it's again that system. So journalists are not a part of this. They just are the eyes and ears of people, where we are supposed to tell people that this is where things are happening wrong. But there are enough experts, and there are enough expert bodies which give reports from time to time, which most of the times the government chooses to trash.
And I'm sure most of the places you may be welcome, and some places may not be welcome.
Part of the job.
I'll come to later. I'll come to another question, but Berjor, I'm sure there are others who want to ask.
Anybody else, please? Any other questions?
I want to ask her.
Yeah, sure. Yes, Uruchi.
Could you, when you meet people like citizens like us or anybody who would like to be effective, one can at least do something like make groups of people who keep inquiring and keep pushing, so that some sort of action is taken. If a small projects are made, and we would put together, take on some projects from you and go and start pushing. That's what we can do. I don't know if we can.
I can hear you, ma'am. I can hear you.
So we can't say that we could financially help all this, but whatever we can do, at least create awareness and create the influence and create the push from people. And actually, there should be solutions even from the people who have actually suffered, who would have known that these kind of things could be helped if so and so thing was there. So if you could just list out a few things which one can do and put us together with people who know much better, maybe we can push.
Well, that's a brilliant suggestion. Thank you, ma'am. It is very issue specific. If there would be people who would like to work on Mumbai infrastructure.
We like to activate even youngsters. We have Rotractors who are teenagers and who like to become effective citizens as they grow, as we want to groom them for becoming good citizens. And we can activate all these things, and start helping people so that our city becomes better developed and better equipped for such disasters which are happening every year.
Absolutely. To begin with, you can possibly organize, a small scale kind of a talk by your local corporator in your own area to ask about. This is specifically pertinent because 2022 are BMC elections, and everybody, the Sena is trying to slug it out. The Congress wants a big share of the pie. The BJP doesn't want to give away the share that it already has. So everybody is trying really hard to make sure that they win BMC. A beginning could possibly be asking questions to your own corporators about infrastructure in your own areas. Doesn't take much.
Yeah, I think what Suruchi meant is that, a couple of years back, the Rotary and Saifi had done this Kerala flood relief programs, where we had done medical camps going in remote places inside, and also we had given a lot of essentials and all. Is the government going to do that present in Sangli, or you think Rotary can play a part?
It is being done, but it has also appealed to several private citizens to come ahead and help. So, for example, when I went to Sangli, I clearly saw that people were sending dry ration and clothes, but there was a clear-cut shortage of chlorine drops and chlorine tablets because people didn't know how to purify their water, whatever little water that they got. People don't have drinking water, so if people can send, say, cans of water, that is again something that will be highly welcome. Basic medical camps, 2 or 3 ambulances going to remote areas and attending to fungal infections or the kind of problems that people have been facing because waterborne diseases will increase. All of it is welcome. BMC has sent a few teams, but whatever is happening is inadequate in some sense, and the government has appealed to people to come ahead and help. That can happen. It doesn't. If you have to distribute, say, some chlorine tablets or some antifungal powders, it doesn't cost much. Even if nobody wants to go there, you can possibly send it to the district collectors at both Kolhapur as well as Sangli, and they can take care of the distribution part if that is a problem. But all these things can be done. Won't cost much, but it will help people a lot.
Just
President Barjor can take a call on this.
Yeah, just expanding from what Abuzar said, Vinaya, while you're on site and you see this happening, for example, you mentioned about water, do you have an internal process of informing your desk who's releasing the news? Put a small thing, water is required and if you want to help. Because then people who watch the TV don't know what's happening. I mean, they just see floods, but they don't know, like what you're mentioning, medicines are required, so give it. So kind of a sort of small byline while you're sort of flashing your news. So it goes into people like, look, this is what they need and who to contact.
You're right, but generally that is done by TV only in cases of huge disasters when the TV channel itself is running some relief fund or some relief measures. Without that, there is so much else that's happening that the tickers and the flashes are full of several other breaking things, which
I see.
unfortunately
I got you.
That disconnect is really.
Okay.
Own suggestions. You could start by telling people that this is required.
Yeah.
You start with your single self and see the effect one single person can have, because you can convert a lot. It just will go on adding. If it becomes effective, it will really catch on.
I hope to do so, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. So Sapna here. Hi.
Hi, Sapna. Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah. Really wonderfully shared, and in a way it really touched us. But Vinay, I just wanted to ask you, what's your personal motivation? You mentioned that you have a family, a little child. So what makes you keep going back, and putting yourself through all this danger?
I don't know what else I'll do.
Fantastic.
It's just something I love doing. I mean, I can't imagine sitting, not meeting people, not understanding what they're going through, not putting it across, not telling their stories in any form. I don't know what else I would have done, really. I'm sorry.
What was your motivation to take up such a career in the first place?
Oh, there was this. That's a hilarious story. My God, that's a very, very hilarious personal story. There was no motivation really. 11 years ago, I fell in love and I decided to get married. And the person I wanted to get married to happened to be a resident of Mumbai. I wasn't from Mumbai. I'm basically a Nandedkar, which is Nanded, which is a small town in central Maharashtra, close to Hyderabad. People would possibly know it as a town where there's the second biggest Gurudwara of the Sikhs. Apart from that, there isn't much of a and I fell in love and I met this guy, and this guy said, "Well, if you have to come to Mumbai, you can't sit at home. You have to take a job, and you have to work. You can't sit at home. Basically, you can't waste yourself like that." And till that point, I wasn't really thinking of anything else. I just wanted to get married and live happily ever after, kind of a fairy tale life. So when he said that to me, I said, "What will I possibly do? I don't know what I'll do." So he said, "What is it that you would like doing?" I said, "I can teach," because I had been, while doing my post graduation, I was teaching in Ferguson College in Pune. And I said, "I can do journalism because that's something I like doing." So he said, "Who's going to ask you for any journalism job with, you have to have some credentials, you have to do something." So I said, "Yeah, that's fair enough." So he told me, "Figure out which is the best journalism school in India." I said, "Okay." And this was our first date. By the way, I'm so sorry if this gets very personal, but this was our first date, and I made a list, and the first name was Asian College of Journalism. Extremely expensive, and I didn't have the funds to study there. He said, "Nothing doing, you take an educational loan." So I applied for loan and I applied for scholarship. And fortunately, I was the only Indian to be selected for a full scholarship at the Asian College of Journalism. I not only got to study there free, I got paid to study there. And I did TV journalism there, and there was a BBC module. So these fantastic professors from BBC came and taught us and told us what powerful medium TV is. And in the middle of that course, I got married. By the end of that course, I was placed with the Hindu, and there's this huge panel. Hindu takes interviews like the IAS officers interviews. So there's 11 members sitting in front of you. I walked in through that door, and Enram asked me, "So, young girl, what is it that you want to do?" And I said, "Would you be interested in working with the Hindu?" I said, "Of course I'll be interested. It's one of the most prestigious names." So he said, "Okay." I said, "But I have one condition. I want to work in Mumbai because I've just got married and I want to stay with my husband." So he said, "So do you promise me if I give you Mumbai, you'll not leave me for the next 2 years at least?" I said, "I'll never leave you if you give me Mumbai. I won't stay with my husband." That is how it all began, really. And my life in Mumbai, my married life, my professional life, it all began at the same time. And there has been no looking back since then.
Okay. Yeah, that's truly amazing, and I think yours is a journey that's going to continue to inspire a lot of people.
I'm sorry, it's too personal, but since you asked that question, that just
No, I can understand, and it's wonderful that you have such a supportive family. It's truly commendable. And as I said, your journey will continue to inspire a lot of people.
Thank you so much.
Purusha, can I ask?
Yes, certainly, Anil.
Vinay, you're doing such a daunting task. Sometimes you must be auditing or analyzing in terms of any of these disasters or things that you get involved with. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your satisfaction? Okay, you achieved what you wanted to achieve in each crisis that you were involved with.
There is no such assessment really, because when something so disastrous happens, in the first place, when you're there, you never know the true extent.
No, I'm talking about making a difference to them. They're in a disaster.
Making a difference to them. Oh yes,
that.
Of course.
That's what I'm asking.
Of course, and there is a level of satisfaction there because when and this is not what I do. This is the power of the TV or power of the medium. The fact that my channel chooses to run the story, the fact that my newspaper decides to print the story, it is not my credit really. It makes a lot of difference. For example, let me tell you, in 2018, there was severe droughts in parts of Maharashtra and several parts of Maharashtra. Most of the state was very badly affected. At that time, I had traveled to do a drought story, and I ended up being in a village which had not received water supply, which did not have any source of water supply for all the years. For the last 8 years, their water supply was cut off because whatever pump was working was not working at the end of it. The only source of water that that village had was a small hand pump, which had to be pumped 8 to 10 hours of a day for such a tiny stream of water. So effectively, the women of that entire village did nothing but fill water and cook and face debilitating health conditions because of this. I was so aghast after reaching there. We made a few calls, asked the collector. Within 3 days after that story, within 3 days after that story was shot, it wasn't even aired. Within 3 days after that story was shot, the chief minister intervened in this matter, and the village got a regular supply of water, a pipelined supply of water within 3 flat days, even before the story went on air. So when the story was being edited and it was going to go on air to be told that this village does not have water, it had to be taken back to the editing table to say that this was the case till 3 days ago, and now it is different. So there is a level of satisfaction, no doubt, because when you cover such a story and when you call up the right people, people have to take cognizance, otherwise they have no answers to give.
But today the press is all aligned here or there. So what objectivity is there? I mean, as an individual, yes, but as a house, as a media house,
I wouldn't want to comment on that. I'm sorry.
I got my answer.
Okay, Vinaya, just extending what Sapna asked you, I can't even fathom the kind of stress you go through. When I go through stress, of course, I have my evening drink. But how do you get on from one disaster to the other? I mean, I could see the lump in your throat, though you didn't have to say that you got a lump in your throat. But you must have had several lumps in your throat. And how do you get over one and get to the other and then get over one? I mean, in the sense, how do you possibly do this? I mean, you can tell me you meditate, okay, that's fine, maybe. But how is it that seeing so much of suffering, seeing so much, how do you sort of face this? And yet you say you're ready to go again.
It's just a new day. Every time I wake up, it's just a new day.
Fantastic.
I absolutely have no time to dwell over. When you are in that moment, when you are there in that disaster, covering those stories, telling people about it, your only priority is that you do something that helps people who are there, or to tell people the seriousness of it. The moment you're out of it, there is something else that awaits you. I have absolutely no time to dwell on it.
Excellent. Fantastic. Anybody else has any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Please, Varsha.
Yeah. Vinaya, you have given us a very vivid description of the floods, and I'm sorry to say, but many of these features I was not aware of.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that and your feelings. Right in the beginning, you mentioned, thank you, you mentioned that landslides are occurring in parts of Maharashtra which have never seen landslides. Now, being in the media, what is it that you can do, or we as a Rotary Club can do to help promote, I mean, to sort of not promote, but to help that this does not happen again? Because from 2005 to 19 and now 21.
Well, ma'am, there are two aspects of it. One is the landslides, which happen in monsoons, and we have the state government has identified landslide prone areas, which this time the landslides have proven that it doesn't adhere to that pattern. And the second is floods. which have had ravaging impact on Western Maharashtra really. So with respect to floods, there has to be a systemic thought that has to go into it, because
Yes.
this is almost an every year feature that, every year there are floods. NH4 goes underwater, for God's sake. A national highway goes underwater. We couldn't think that before constructing a highway, we couldn't think that floods are going to render it absolutely useless for 8 days, 10 days, 15 days of the year. Crucial heavy vehicles just stuck there, just go off. So that is unpardonable, really. Several key highways, I don't know how it is not considered while building roads that if this is the danger water mark, then the roads have to be built above it. Either when they were constructed, the danger water marks were below, or they were not considered at all. In either case, there has to be a timely review of infrastructure projects to make sure that that does not happen. Secondly, there is a rampant unregulated construction that has been happening across, because people want to build hotels, people want to build houses, people do not want to adhere to certain plans. Yesterday when I was traveling in Ashta, one of the local politicians was telling me that in the local elections there last time, one of the major issues that the villagers wanted was a 90-degree drainage what do you see, drainage pipe that they wanted laid. The guy who was telling me said that our party refused to do it because a 90-degree drainage pipe would not work. It would end up flooding the whole region.
Yeah, absolutely.
The opposition guy did it. He won it. And now the entire area is flooded. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We keep asking.
No, I understand that, we talk about corruption and we talk about, some responsibility. But how can we see that?
By asking the right questions and by making sure that there is, at least in the younger generation, there is that level of awareness where a sense of being civic is not about having multiple degrees or owning businesses, but about asking the basic right questions to the people who are responsible to do certain jobs.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe one should start at school and college level to tell everybody. Yes, you remember some time back they had stopped plastic bags and they wanted everybody to use
plastic is back again with a bang.
Yeah, and they were fining. And I remember, the mother saying, "Oh, my son will get angry, and therefore I have to carry this cotton bag." So it was the son who was actually making the mother do the right job.
No, unfortunately, it's again, nobody has the will because there's so much of economic thing into it. Even for plastic, the packaging that goes, there has to be a systemic will. You and I carrying cloth bags, yes, it will reduce the usage of single-time plastic. It will not lead to systemic changes where we are generating so much of waste through several things that we ask for. Amazon delivers, JioMart delivers, several people deliver to us.
COVID has started this waste management has just gone beyond control. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zeenat, can I request you to propose a vote of thanks? Otherwise, Vinaya and I think we'll carry on for the next 2 hours.
Barjor, before that, can I just ask one line? Vinaya, you just said that you love meeting people and all. And I think last week when we were chatting, I told you that we have got a membership strength of 120 plus and that we are a 53-year-old club. And President Barjor has also given us the responsibility of adding new members. So you think we can invite you to join our club as a member, Vinaya?
It will be my privilege.
Great. Wonderful.
You stole that from me, Abuzar. I was keeping it for the last.
Well, you went on for the vote of thanks, President. What are you saying?
No, after that. Because after you thanked, I wanted to sort of, anyway. Great. So you are a member. Great. Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Vinaya. Thank you.
It will be wonderful having you. Yes, Zeenat. Thank you. You're on mute, Zeenat. You're on mute.
He's from Xavier's.
Yeah.
बोल रहा है पर किसी को सुनाई नहीं.
Zeenat, you're on mute and your video has gone off.
Okay, till Zinat comes back, I just have a quick mention. There is no real secretarial announcements, except that next week, Wednesday in the evening, we have a firebrand person who's often seen on TV. I don't want to reveal his name, but please mark this down. You can't miss this talk. It will be a fantastic event next Wednesday, that's 4th at 6:30 p.m.
Borja, I think Zenat is struggling with the thing tech, so maybe you can just
Okay,
do the both of them.
so then, Abuzar, would you kindly continue what you were saying? Because if I start, I might not end.
No, sorry, Burjor. Anyway, so I would like to thank you, Vinaya, on behalf of our club. You were very kind when I asked you to be a keynote speaker, and I'm sure all of us not only benefited, but it was a great awareness to know that what kind of struggles and challenges people like you go through. It is just not sitting in the studios and recording, but actually going to those places and recording and making it open to the public eyes. So thank you very much, Vinaya, for being present at our meeting today and enriching us with your knowledge. And on behalf of President Burjor also, and on behalf of all our club members, I sincerely thank you and look forward to having you at the Bombay Midtown. I'm sure we'll have many more opportunities of knowing each other and being of help to each other. All of us.
To help us more, to help others. That's
yes.
the consideration. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinaya.